Why is it that so many men, across centuries and cultures, find themselves on their knees before women, not only in rituals of romance, but in daily acts of devotion that drain their lives? From medieval knights pledging loyalty to a distant lady, to modern men bending their time, money, and energy in pursuit of approval, the pattern is strikingly the same. We see it in grand gestures, in endless chasing, in the silent suffering of men who confuse surrender with love. The world calls it chivalry, respect, even the highest form of masculinity, but Schopenhauer called it something far less flattering. For him, this constant devotion is not proof of nobility, but evidence of an ancient instinct, a secret law of nature disguised as romance. Men kneel because the species commands it, not because their hearts freely choose it. Look around, and the evidence is everywhere. Men bankrupt themselves for affection, destroy friendships for desire, and sacrifice years of their lives to women who may never return the same depth of loyalty. And society applauds it, as if self-dissolution were a badge of honor. The modern man believes he is unique in this suffering, but history shows the same script repeated over and over. This is the reality Schopenhauer forces us to confront. What looks like love is often a spell. What feels like devotion is often compulsion. And what men believe is their choice is, in truth, the ancient instinct of the species using them for its own ends. To face this truth is uncomfortable, but it opens a door that most never dare to cross. A door that reveals why men bow, why they suffer, and why liberation begins only when they see the instinct for what it really is. Across time, men have been praised not for their freedom, but for their willingness to give it up in the name of devotion. From the songs of wandering poets to the silent sacrifices of factory workers bringing home wages to families that barely see them, society has written an old story where a man's worth is measured by how much he bends. He is told that to love means to endure, to prove his sincerity through labor, through risk, through endless offering. This myth is so deeply planted that men often mistake exhaustion for pride. They build monuments to women in literature, art, and cinema, celebrating the figure of the man who kneels and stays there without question. The world admires Romeo dying for Juliet, but never asks why he was willing to erase himself in the first place. Even today, we see men who give their whole lives to a dream of approval, working long hours, not for themselves, but to prove that they can provide, shaping every decision to maintain the image of loyalty and sacrifice. Reality shows how common this script is. Divorce courts filled with men who handed over decades of effort for a family that no longer exists. Young men drowning in debt for the promise of affection. Older men clinging to relationships that hollow them out because they believe leaving would be dishonorable. All of this devotion has been romanticized as love, yet beneath it lies a cultural rule that teaches men their dignity is found not in standing tall, but in kneeling low. Schopenhauer's voice cuts against this myth by insisting that what looks like honor may actually be a disguise for something far less noble. And it is this illusion of devotion that he begins to unravel. When Schopenhauer looked at love, he did not see romance, poetry, or divine union. He saw nature wearing a mask. In his view, every gesture of affection, every sacrifice, and every obsession was nothing more than the will of life pushing individuals to serve reproduction. To him, the truth was brutal. Men fall to their knees not because of free choice, but because they are moved by an instinct that belongs not to them, but to the species itself. He argued that love blinds men with illusions so powerful that they abandon reason, as if hypnotized, all to secure a future child who may never even be born. The man who thinks he is giving everything for happiness is in fact being used as a vessel to keep life going. Modern science echoes this in quiet ways. Biologists describe how attraction, obsession, and even heartbreak are guided by evolutionary codes written long before culture and romance existed. The boy who loses sleep over a crush, the adult who empties his bank account to impress, the aging man who chases youth in the arms of a younger woman, all of them are repeating a law older than history. Schopenhauer dared to strip away the illusions, declaring that love was not noble but cruel, not a gift but a chain. This perspective offended his age and still disturbs ours, because it collapses the fairy tale that so many want to believe in. Yet reality does not hide. We see men who destroy themselves for affection that vanishes overnight, who mistake instinct for destiny, who call slavery devotion. Schopenhauer's provocation is this: what men call love may be nothing more than nature demanding that they kneel, and what they call freedom may be only the dream of an instinct that never lets go. Schopenhauer believed that the greatest illusion of human life is the idea that we live for ourselves. In truth, he said, the species rules us like a hidden master, directing our desires without asking permission. A man thinks he is choosing a partner out of taste or affection, yet the deeper law is that his instincts are calculating health, fertility, and survival, all to serve children who do not exist yet. This is why the most stubborn passions appear in the strangest places, why men abandon stable lives for affairs that make no sense, why they chase women who hurt them, why they accept humiliation in the name of desire. The will of the species does not care for peace or dignity. It only demands continuation. History shows how powerful this command can be. Wars have been started over women. Dynasties collapsed because rulers could not control their appetites, and entire cultures shaped their codes of honor around controlling reproduction. Even in modern times, men ruin careers, lose fortunes, and destroy families under the same silent law. From the outside, it looks irrational, but from the view of nature, it is perfectly logical. The species has no concern for individual suffering, only for its own survival. Men kneel because the species wants sons. They sacrifice because the species wants a future. They endure because the species demands continuity. This is the tyranny Schopenhauer exposed. The fact that human lives can be drained like fuel for a fire they did not light. And while society dresses this in words like romance, duty, or devotion, the reality remains that the individual is often nothing more than a servant of life itself, a temporary tool used by nature to keep its endless cycle alive. What makes the command of the species so effective is that it never shows itself naked. Instead, it dresses its demand in beauty, in longing, in promises of happiness. Schopenhauer called this the great trick of nature, the way instinct disguises itself as love. Men do not see the raw drive to reproduce. They see perfection in the smile of a stranger, destiny in the eyes of a woman, eternity in the rush of desire. The illusion is so complete that reason is silenced. Even the most cautious men become reckless when struck by it. This is why people call love blind, because it really does cover the flaws of the other, hiding incompatibility, hiding danger, hiding the cost. The spell convinces a man that without this one woman, his life will be meaningless, as if the entire world has shrunk into her presence. Modern life proves how powerful this illusion remains. Apps are filled with men competing desperately for attention. Celebrities ruin their reputations overnight for an affair. Ordinary men spend money they do not have to impress women who barely notice them. The economy itself profits from the illusion, selling jewelry, weddings, and promises of forever to those who cannot see past the haze. In every case, the man believes he is chasing joy, when in reality, he is obeying the same ancient law Schopenhauer described. The illusion is not an accident. It is the very tool by which the species ensures its continuity. If men saw clearly, they might resist, but blinded by the spell, They kneel willingly, convinced that their sacrifice is choice, when it is only compulsion painted in colors of romance. This is why Schopenhauer insisted that what men call love is the most cunning deception nature ever created. The picture of men kneeling is not just a poetic image. It is a daily reality, repeated in countless forms. From the grand gestures of public proposals to the quiet routines of men reshaping their lives around a woman's approval, the act of kneeling is both literal and symbolic. Schopenhauer saw in this posture a truth that few want to admit, that men often dissolve their individuality in devotion, raising women into idols whose desires dictate their every move. The man who kneels believes he is honoring love, but in practice, he is handing over his freedom. He cancels plans, abandons ambitions, and silences his own voice, all to remain close to the object of his longing. Modern life is flooded with proof. Social media is full of men curating every image to gain the smallest sign of attention. Young men obsessively texting and waiting for replies. Middle-aged men giving up friendships and passions to fit into a partner's mold. Older men draining savings on gifts that will not buy respect. The idol may change faces, but the posture stays the same. A man reduced to proving himself worthy of what he already was before he bent. Society even rewards this posture, applauding sacrifice while ignoring the cost of self-erasure. What Schopenhauer revealed is that the man who kneels believes he is closer to happiness, but in truth, he is further from himself. He becomes a shadow orbiting someone else's light, convinced that devotion is strength when it is really submission. This is the hidden tragedy of the idol, that men create it with their own hands, lift it higher with their own sacrifices, and then bow before it. As if it were fate, never noticing that the chains around their necks are ones they willingly forged. Behind the instinct that Schopenhauer exposed lies another layer, one that does not come from nature alone, but from childhood itself. Many men learn early that love and approval are earned through submission. A boy who grows up trying to keep peace in a tense home quickly learns to watch moods, to give up his own needs, to please in order to avoid conflict. This script, written into his nervous system, does not vanish when he becomes an adult. Instead, it hides beneath his relationships, making him believe that kneeling is not only natural, but necessary for love. He does not see devotion as a choice, but as survival. Modern psychology confirms how common this is. Therapists speak of men who mistake compliance for care, who cannot say no without feeling crushing guilt, who confuse control with affection. Social media and popular culture add to the trap by portraying endless stories where men prove themselves only through sacrifice, teaching once again that love must be earned by bending. In real life, the evidence is everywhere. Men apologizing for needs that are human, men working jobs they hate just to keep fragile relationships alive, men giving without limit in hopes of being seen as worthy. The trap is that these patterns feel like virtue when they are actually echoes of wounds never faced. What appears as devotion is often a replay of childhood survival, the same boy now in a grown body, still kneeling to secure safety. Schopenhauer described instinct, but psychology shows how easily it joins forces with memory, binding men twice, once by nature and once by their own past. This double chain is why so many men cannot stand up, even when they know they are breaking. To them, kneeling feels like love, when in truth, it is fear wearing the mask of devotion. Every act of kneeling carries a hidden price, and over time, that price becomes impossible to ignore. A man who lives in constant devotion slowly empties himself, giving away his energy, his focus, and even his sense of direction. At first, it feels like purpose, but later, it turns into fatigue, resentment, and quiet despair. Blind sacrifice steals the ability to choose, because when a man measures his value only through what he can give, he forgets what he truly wants. The proof of this cost is all around us. Men in middle age confess they no longer know who they are outside of their relationships, careers, or families they built for others. Younger men burn out trying to please partners who never asked for such extremes, leaving them drained and bitter before their lives have even begun. Modern workplaces take advantage of this devotion too, rewarding the man who never says no, who takes on every burden without complaint, only to discard him when he breaks. The culture applauds sacrifice, while quietly ignoring the wreckage it leaves behind. Blind sacrifice does not create lasting love. It creates dependency and imbalance, because when one kneels too long, the other learns to expect it. Over time, the dynamic rots from within, turning what once felt like love into chains of obligation. Schopenhauer's philosophy makes the cost even starker, reminding us that the species itself has no concern for the individual's exhaustion. A man can lose health, joy, and identity in this cycle, and the instinct that drove him will not offer thanks. The tragedy is that society calls it noble, while the man himself is left broken. To see this truth is painful, but without seeing it, he will continue to pay the price, believing his suffering is proof of love when it is only the slow erosion of his life. What Schopenhauer revealed with sharp clarity is that men are not as free as they believe. Because desire rules them with invisible strings, it does not shout, it whispers, and yet its pull is stronger than any argument of reason. A man who thinks himself independent can still be undone by a sudden spark of attraction, and in that moment, his plans, his values, even his morals can be rearranged in service of the new desire. This is not weakness in the ordinary sense. It is the quiet authority of an instinct that hides in plain sight. In today's world, this ruler shows its power more openly than ever. Entire industries survive on selling images that awaken hunger in men, from advertising that uses beauty to manipulate spending, to entertainment designed to hold attention through constant stimulation. Dating platforms are built like markets of desire, pulling men into cycles of swiping, chasing, and competing for approval that rarely comes. The man who believes he is making rational choices is often only responding to a trigger set deep within his biology. Reality proves how little control many men have in the face of this ruler. Scandals erupt when public figures risk everything for fleeting affairs. Families are torn apart by secrets born of obsession. Young men spend hours scrolling through screens, chasing images that leave them emptier each day. Desire does not announce itself as a master, but it bends lives all the same, shaping priorities, bending futures, and pushing men to kneel without ever realizing they have bowed. Schopenhauer's warning was not simply about love, but about the force behind it, a ruler that demands obedience while disguising itself as choice, leaving men to wonder why they suffer when the truth is they never truly chose at all. Love in Schopenhauer's time was already a battlefield of instincts, but in our age, it has taken the shape of a market where men trade effort, money, and identity in exchange for fleeting approval. Dating is no longer just about meeting someone. It has become a competition of who can display the most value, who can present the brightest image, who can kneel the fastest before demand. Social media amplifies this market, turning attention into currency and affection into a commodity to be bought, sold, and measured. Men post curated lives, not because they are living fully, but because they are trying to appear desirable in a world where desire is auctioned. The marketplace rewards those willing to bend themselves into roles, to abandon authenticity in favor of what sells. Proof of this is visible everywhere. Men stretch their finances to maintain images they cannot afford, invest countless hours chasing validation from strangers, and burn themselves out trying to win approval that vanishes in a swipe. The market thrives on their devotion, feeding industries of fashion, fitness, travel, and technology, all tied to the promise of attraction. The tragedy is that many men mistake this performance for freedom when it is only another form of kneeling, another stage for the same old instinct. Schopenhauer's insight echoes here more than ever, because what appears as choice in the market is in fact the same compulsion that has always ruled, only now dressed in consumerism and speed. A man believes he is chasing love, but he is really paying into a system that profits from his longing. The market of affection has no concern for his well-being. It only thrives on his endless effort to prove himself, leaving him tired, unseen, and still on his knees before an idol that keeps changing faces. Much of what men call love is shaped not only by instinct, but by performance. From an early age, men are told that their role is to prove strength, stability, and usefulness, and so every romantic pursuit becomes a stage where masculinity is displayed like a costume. Schopenhauer's insight reveals itself here, because kneeling is not always about devotion alone. It is also about playing the part that society demands. A man bends because he believes others are watching, measuring his worth by how much he can endure, how much he can provide, how far he can go to secure admiration. The tragedy is that this theater rewards appearances more than reality. Men are praised for grand gestures that hide emptiness, for sacrifices that leave them hollow, for loyalty that costs them their spirit. In the modern world, this theater has only grown louder. Weddings are broadcast online like public spectacles, proposals staged in stadiums for applause, relationships curated on platforms as if they were products for display. Men feel forced to play their roles, even when their hearts are tired, even when their devotion is killing them inside. The reality is seen in countless stories of men who maintain the image of strength while secretly collapsing, who smile for photos while drowning in silence. What should have been love becomes another performance, another script handed down by culture and enforced by expectation. Schopenhauer's words cut through this illusion, exposing that beneath the theater lies the same instinct demanding submission. Men kneel not only for women, but for the audience of the world, convinced that masculinity is something to be proven in endless acts of sacrifice. Yet the applause never lasts, and the curtain always falls, leaving the actor drained while the crowd moves on to the next show. Schopenhauer's bleak vision left little room for escape, yet even within his philosophy, there is space for resistance. The instinct may be powerful, the illusions may be seductive, but men are not without choice when they begin to see clearly. The quiet revolt begins when a man recognizes the pattern and refuses to play the part demanded of him. He does not abandon love, but he stops kneeling to it. He no longer sees devotion as erasure, no longer treats sacrifice as proof, no longer bows to instincts that demand his destruction. In modern times, this revolt can already be seen, though often silently. More men are walking away from marriages that consume them. More young men are questioning the endless chase for approval on dating apps. More fathers are choosing to live for presence and balance instead of collapsing under the weight of duty. The reality is not glamorous. It does not look like rebellion in the streets, but it shows itself in the choices of individuals who decide that their lives are not fuel for the species or puppets for culture. They refuse the idol. They step out of the theater. They break the cycle of blind sacrifice. Critics may call it selfish, but in truth, it is survival. Because without this revolt, men will continue to kneel until there is nothing left of them. Schopenhauer may have doubted the possibility of freedom, yet every act of resistance proves that awareness itself can weaken the chains. The quiet revolt is not about escaping desire, but about refusing to let desire rule. It is about standing, not kneeling, about living as a man rather than a servant of instincts and illusions. And in that simple act of standing, a man discovers that the greatest strength is not in bending, but in refusing to bow at all.